Challenges of vulnerability management in a big organization. The Bosch PSIRT. Hello, I'm Carolina, and I work at the Bosch Product Security and Incident Response team, the PSIRT. I am also doing my PhD in cybersecurity risk management. Today, I will speak a little bit about what we do in the Bosch PSIRT, also about our efforts to adopt industry best practices and the challenges we had and still have, and then jump to some conclusions and lessons learned. So one of my motivations to do this talk is to share a little bit with the audience about how vulnerability, responsible disclosure, and vulnerability management are handled within a big and diverse organization such as Bosch. So I will speak a little bit about who we are, the Bosch PSIRT, some of the best practices we have adopted, some of the challenges we have, and some of our lessons learned. So how did the idea of this talk started? Well, first of all, this is the 4th year I attend to the IoTSF Conference, and the first year I'm a speaker here. So last year, it got my attention that there were a few talks around vulnerability disclosure in the conference, and also around these best practice guidelines published by the IoTSF in 2017. And also it was mentioned this report in which several IoT companies were checked against these best practices, showing the results of how much or whether they complied or not with the guidelines. So then the following question arises: how do we as the Bosch PSIRT stand against these practices? So first of all, where do I work and why I'm concerned with vulnerability disclosure best practices? So the Bosch Product Security and Incident Response team is the central point of contact for security researchers and other stakeholders to report any security issue that can be related to a Bosch product or a product from a Bosch brand. So we have 4 main areas of responsibility. The first is security incident response. The second is vulnerability management, which can be also triggered by the incident response process. The other one is security community work, one of the reasons I'm also here sharing with you, and security monitoring. So we regularly interact with several internal and external organizations. So internally, we're part of the Bosch Cyber Defense Center, which has several teams, some of them in charge of the cybersecurity of our internal Bosch infrastructure, whereas us as the Bosch PSIRT have exclusive responsibility of the product security. So also externally, we're the ones that interact with the security researchers and with several international organizations, also focus in the automotive industry and other OEMs, PSIRTs from suppliers and customers. And since last year, we are a MITRE CNA, a CVE numbering authority, which means that we can issue our own CVEs for Bosch vulnerabilities. Okay, so one of the central topics of this talk are check against industry best practices, particularly against the IoTSF vulnerability disclosure best practice guidelines. So as I said, last year I came across this report and I wanted to take a look. How does Bosch stand here? So well, I took a look into the report and what I found was the following table, which refers to our smart home products, which makes sense because this report was about consumer IoT products. So we see a reference to our website, the Bosch PSIRT website, in which we have our vulnerability disclosure policy. So there we have a check, which might appear to be a very basic thing to have. However, if we look into the global results of this report, we can see that less than 10% of the companies surveyed have actually a publicly available vulnerability disclosure policy. In the second item, it's indicated that we have a coordinated disclosure type, which means we are not 100% open with all the security information, but we are also not hiding information from our customers. We operate in a need-to-know basis, which means that we provide our customers with all the necessary information to update their products or apply mitigations. So we could do that either by a public security advisory, which we publish in our website, or by directly contacting our customers, which we can do in some cases when we have B2B customers. Also, we coordinate with security researchers to be sure that they don't publish any sensitive information about exploits before we can develop a fix or recommend mitigations. Regarding the other points, bug bounty program, having a proxy disclosure, having a security TXT file, and having a Dutch security page, we appear in the report as a no. So let's look into this. So let's see. First of all, proxy disclosure service. Well, we actually have a background page that researchers can use to report website vulnerabilities. However, vulnerabilities for products are not yet in the scope of this service. Then bug bounty or reward. Actually, for website vulnerabilities, again, we give background points. And also, we offer all researchers to have their name written down in our Bosch Hall of Fame, which is available in our website, because we want to give recognition to researchers for their contribution on helping us in improving the security of Bosch products. However, we don't have monetary rewards yet. Security TXT, well, that was in our agenda when I saw this report. So when we used this to push forward this initiative, and since January 2020, we have the security TXT file, which allows researchers to find us through this machine-readable standard. So, and for that security page, also since January 2020, if you type bosch.com/security, you're redirected to our page. Same if you type security.bosch.com. So this is an overview of the Bosch PSIRT homepage. So if we had to take a picture of how we would look if this report was done based on our situation now, we will see that at least we have a yes in security TXT and in that security page. And for these other two, we might have a sort of partial compliance. So, well, trying to comply with security best practices is an ongoing work for us. So, other standards that we look into for best practices are the following. The PSIRT services framework, from FIRST, in which our processes are based, the ISO IEC 29147 for vulnerability disclosure, the ISO IEC 30111 for vulnerability handling, the ISO SAE 21434 for automotive security, which is a new standard and is very important for us since the automotive industry is one of our main customers. So, well, adopting best practices or aligning with these standards is just a start, but we have also a lot of challenges to reach our objectives. So the next part of the presentation is about challenges we faced in Bosch as a big organization to do vulnerability responsible disclosure and management. So our challenges derive from the following issues. First, we have a wide range of products for diverse industries. We have a variety of brands. We have a complex supply chain. Also, we need to define consistent processes for vulnerability management, but we have also fairly unique cases all the time. Also, we have to establish a good level of communication and coordination with a variety of internal and external stakeholders.
So first challenge, I guess you all have heard about Bosch. Maybe you have a Bosch appliance at your house, maybe a smart appliance. So we're in IoT, we're in industrial control systems moving towards Industry 4.0, we're in building automation, And of course, we're very strong in the automotive industry, providing electronic control units for cars. So that means that we develop products by different business units, which are fairly independent one from each other. We use a variety of technologies. We also have to deal with different industry requirements. You can imagine that the automotive industry has a lot of safety regulations and other legal requirements that we don't have in the consumer IoT. Also, our customers are B2B as well as B2C. And because of all these reasons, it's not possible for one single entity as the Bosch PSIRT to know in detail everything about all our products.
So, well, how do we deal with this challenge of having so many and diverse products? Well, we have a model for product incident response and vulnerability management that has at the same time a centralized entity, which is us, the Bosch PSIRT, but also distributed entities in each business unit. So first of all, there is us, the Bosch PSIRT, which are the central point of contact. So it's not confusing for researchers who they should approach. But we have our counterparts in each business unit, which are the product vulnerability and incident response teams. And they have direct contact with the developers of each product line and also with the product owners and know in more depth each one of the products. And also we have the product security officer, which looks into security in products in all their life cycle.
Second challenge. If you look at this grid, you see a lot of brands. Maybe you know some of them, but maybe you didn't know that all these brands, over 60 brands, belong to Bosch. And we as the Bosch PSIRT need to deal with vulnerability disclosure and vulnerability management for all of these brands.
Following problem. If a researcher wants to report a security finding in a product that belongs to a Bosch brand, but is not obviously linked to Bosch, then how do we make sure that they can reach the Bosch PSIRT? So one of the things that could happen is that the researcher can go into this brands page and then they will find a link to the Bosch PSIRT website. And actually, this is one of the recommendations of the IoTSF Vulnerability Disclosure Best Practice Guidelines, and we have implemented in many of our brands, but not in every brand, because as I said, it's very challenging to be in a so big and diverse organization, and each brand is an independent business by itself. So we're working on this. And the other thing is that what about the researcher goes and Google it? For instance, Adaros, which is one of our thermal technologies brands, how to report a vulnerability. Then for the number 2 to be successful, we need that there's some search engine optimization that allows that Google can relate this brand with the Bosch PSIRT. And then on the other hand, whenever we have the link in the different brands' website or a mention to the Bosch PSIRT, then that will improve the search engine optimization. So this is a challenge we're working on currently, and we have achieved it for many of our brands. Third challenge, a complex supply chain. So actually, as you know, IoT products and other cyber-physical products have a very complex supply chain because nowadays one manufacturer cannot make all. So let's say we have a component from a supplier. This component could be a chip, a piece of hardware, but it also could be code, firmware, a software, a library, a stack, whatever. So let's say a researcher finds a vulnerability in this component. So then maybe in Bosch we use this component in one product, but maybe we use it in many different products. And then let's say product 1 is used by customer 1, 2, and 3, and even more complicated. Customer 1 has one implementation of the product, and customer 2 has a different implementation, which means that the security fix might have to be implemented differently for these two customers. And then, even more complicated, maybe product 2 shares some customers with product 1, which means that it's very important for us as Bosch that customers 1 and 2 and 3 get a consistent information between the supplies from both products. So identify products and customers is one of the main things we need to do. Follow up the development of fixes and mitigations because we need to provide information without undue delay to our customers. So this might be in a different timing for different products. However, we need to do this as soon as possible and at the same time in a coordinated way. And also coordinated and consistent communication with involved parties, which I already said.
So we need to have repeatable processes to assure a good quality work. But at the same time, we usually have to deal with fairly unique cases. So as I said, we work on aligning with industry best practices, and we use known standards as CVEs, CVSS scores, and CWEs to have an efficient communication with our stakeholders. We're also working continuously improving our processes and also to deliver threat information and move forward into threat intelligence. So also we have several tools, such as our case management tools that allow us to have tracking details of oral cases and link them to different vulnerability information and communicate with our internal stakeholders so we can follow a workflow that is also audit friendly. We also have our website. So there's our responsible disclosure policy, as you know. There's guidance on how to report vulnerabilities. We publish also there our security advisories, and we give acknowledgement to researchers through our Hall of Fame. We also have security monitoring tools, which allow us to monitor several open sources of security information. And we're also working on our Bosch vulnerability database, which is an internal database of vulnerabilities that will work as a complement to the NVD. Last but not least, one of our main challenges is communication. We have to deal as the Bosch PSIRT with a variety of internal and external stakeholders. For instance, security researchers, Bosch developers and security teams, third-party component suppliers and their PSIRTs if they have one, internal component suppliers, B2B and B2C customers, and security communities. So in no particular order, these are some of the resources we have to deal with all this. First, we publish security advisories. We also issue CVEs. We provide direct communication to customers, and we coordinate between all these parties. For that, we also need teamwork, and we give recognition to researchers and reporters. For that, we also acknowledge that different stakeholders have different expectations. For instance, a security researcher might want to publish their findings as soon as possible, while developers and security teams need to fix the vulnerability before the information gets publicly disclosed. So for that, we need to have also soft skills and good communication in order to make the most for all stakeholders. And from that, we always take our lessons learned. So to conclude, it's not enough to have a channel for reporting security issues, but it has to be supported by processes that assure the correct handling of information, not only fixes, but also that the coordination is done properly. Best practices need to be adapted to the organization's size and structure. So in our case, as the Bosch PSIRT, we need to have one coordinating entity, but also product specialized security teams. Also, best practices are needed across the entire supply chain. So in our case, it's much easier when our customers and our suppliers also have a PSIRT. Also, flexibility is super important, so we can adapt to different scenarios. And on one hand, we have well-defined criteria to make decisions, but also we have to make those decisions in a case-to-case basis. So also, this requires multidisciplinary skills We are a diverse team, able to adapt to different situations, and also we have realized that coordination and good communication are essential.